feels a little weird here on the couch by myself. I guess I'll slide on over. Well, really excited today for this panel. We've got... Is your mic off?
We can share.
All right, you guys are going to have to,
We can do it.
Or hand it off.
We don't really need Casey to say that much, to be honest.
Yeah, he's not really that important, so these are the two panelists that matter.
He's cute, not smart. We brought him here for his good looks.
All right, y'all. So the topic is Inscriptions Are Cypherpunk. And I think a lot of people don't know what that means, the word cypherpunk. So for any one of you, does someone want to take a stab at kind of defining what cypherpunk is, or give a little bit of history behind that word?
All right, I'll take a stab at it. So I believe cypherpunk was first used by Timothy May in his Cypherpunk Manifesto, and he was really kind of applying that the ideas of anarchy could be applied vis-a-vis technology. I think there's even a great quote that he says that it was like cyber-libertarian might have been another word that he used for it, but cypherpunk has a special ring about it. And it's really about being able to build the tools that we need for the self-liberation that we can actually access through these tools.
Yeah, I think of it as being a avenue through which people can non-violently change the world, right? We have all these systems, all these oppressors, and yeah, you can go out in the streets, you can vote for some candidate, you can agitate, you can build a business, but if you're a programmer, another way that you can influence the world is that you can create an embodiment of an idea and put it out in the form of code, and people can adopt it or not. And it's a very nice way of influencing the world because it's completely voluntary, it's completely nonviolent. And just by putting an implementation, i.e. a piece of code out there that implements an idea, you can take a big swing at the powers that be in a way which is very hard for them to stop.
So cypherpunk's kind of like we're seizing back control of governments, we're seizing freedom, we're getting, taking control back in our lives. With some of those, some of these principles, it would be freedom-oriented cryptography. And cryptography enables all that. That was kind of a key tenet, right? That cryptography is what enables some of this.
I mean, cryptography is the ultimate sort of asymmetric invention. If you look at the history of warfare, of physical violence, it is a constant battle between offensive and defensive technologies, right? You have, people running around on chariots, and then all of a sudden you have archers and swords on the offensive side, and then you have heavy plate mail on the defensive side. Guns are actually a very powerful defensive technology. People armed with firearms digging in don't have to be as highly trained with pretty simple fortifications can hold off a much larger offensive opponent. And cryptography is the ultimate asymmetric defensive technology. For all the power that the government has, for all the men, all the violence, all the guns, all the taxes they collect and the money that they print, they cannot break simple encrypted communication, which every device on Earth is capable of producing and consuming. So cryptography really is the enabling technology.
And just following up on that, cryptography, as in the artistry of secrecy, this is something that's been at the forefront of war for the entire development of war. Like, even the Spartans had an edge in war by the fact that they had a skytail that allowed for them rudimentary encryption so that when their messengers got caught, their messengers could...
What's a skytail?
A skytail is a stick that has a piece of leather wrapped around it, and they stamp it down vertically. And only if you have a stick that matches the right circumference does it wrap around to make the alignment that allows for you to essentially decrypt the message. And this is one of the ways that they actually gained an edge in war, because when their messengers were captured, their messages couldn't be decrypted. And so it's really important just to know that cryptography has always been something that has been at the forefront of war and is an important defensive technology that fundamentally defines war.
And there was a group of individuals in the 1990s in San Francisco Bay Area, and they're legendarily called the cypherpunks, right? The guys who figured that encryption could enable all these freedoms. What was really interesting in the 1990s is the U.S. tried to ban encryption, and they tried to classify encryption as a weapons export. So you'd have to register as like an arms dealer. So these cypherpunks in the Bay Area, these tech guys, wore the code, the encryption code on their T-shirts as a joke to mock the ridiculousness of trying to ban the code. But yes, so getting us back to Bitcoin, would Satoshi be a cypherpunk? Erin?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think essentially, like, going back to, I think, what maybe Casey said or Erik said in the first place is like, it's essentially like anarchist technology that's voluntarily adopted. And I think that's a really nice aspect of it that I think, Satoshi, the whole build it and they will come of it, right? And we kind of have seen that over the last 15 years. I think Satoshi definitely fits into that vision.
And I'm going to kick this over to Casey. Do you think Satoshi would like inscriptions?
I don't know. I actually think Satoshi might not like inscriptions. He said multiple times, like, we've got to, be pretty, very tight about what goes on the main chain. I think ultimately, though, something that Satoshi might have been missing is that these other chains are just very low viability. So in Satoshi's mind, okay, there can be other things like Namecoin or whatever if you want a DNS-like system. There can be other chains. But what we see in the world today is that there's Bitcoin and there's everything else, right? If you want a chain which is secure, you want a chain which is decentralized, you use Bitcoin. And these other chains are simply not an option. So maybe he would soften his stance a little bit. But ultimately, like, what Satoshi likes and doesn't like is, like, kind of irrelevant. I have a lot of respect for Satoshi. I love Satoshi, like everybody else. I especially like that he's a good writer, a very, very good writer. And this is one of the ways that you can know immediately that Craig Wright was not Satoshi. But he's a fucking terrible writer. He sounded like a goddamn idiot every time he touched the keyboard. Satoshi was well-mannered, well-spoken, persuasive. So a lot of respect for him. Maybe not. I don't know. I think maybe he wouldn't have liked inscriptions. But I think his reaction to it would have been the Andrew Polstra reaction. When inscriptions first came out, there was all these people having their hot takes, new pro and con inscriptions and whatever. And I think the best take came from Andrew Polstra, who was like, yeah, we can't do anything about this. Like, we should just, like, think about other things, right? Like, maybe I don't like it, but there's no principal way we can stop this. Like, what did we do? We built, like, a decentralized communication network that has essentially a built-in anti-spam mechanism, which is paying fees, right? And so, like, sort of by the construction of the network, if you pay the fee, you take the ride. And this is the system that we built, and it's sort of fine. And he also said, like, look, if people aren't filling Bitcoin blocks up with financial transactions, why shouldn't we just pay the miners to fill the blocks up with bullshit and benefit from the additional security to the network?
I mean, at a minimum, people should be happy about it as it increases more transaction. As demand for block space increases, transaction fees increase, which replaces the declining subsidy over time. So even if you hate inscriptions, you should still like it from a fee perspective, a long-term security model perspective.
Yeah, and I think people sort of have the attitude that, like, okay, we know that every 4 years the base block subsidy is getting cut in half, and they have a sort of optimism that by the time we get there, this problem will be fixed, right? And I think that is, and so they don't like these various unsavory things, filling up blocks and paying security fees. They're like, it's not time yet for us to, like, worry about this problem. We still have time. I personally would like to see solutions to it as early as possible, even if they are silly, frivolous use cases. I don't want to get 4 years from now, 8 years from now, when we're like, oh shit, declining subsidy is really a problem. Having those fees and having proof that we can generate fees if we need to is very good for Bitcoin and very increases my optimism around Bitcoin.
And Erik, with inscriptions, I know that I forget if you're a fan or not. Are you a big fan of?
I have an interesting middle path of it.
He loves every single inscription on Bitcoin, every single one. He fully endorses, yeah.
Well, like, to echo what Casey said, first of all, as Bolster pointed out, like, we can't do anything about it. So to me, that was kind of like, let's table it and worrying about it. I understand the argument that a lot of people have. They're like, yeah, we don't like the aesthetics of having all these monkey images on our blockchain. That's fair, but again, can't do anything about it. And to me, and this is what makes you kind of a tragic figure, in my opinion, is like, you understood that, like, degens are going to degen because they're degens. And that right now they're degenning on Solana, shitcoin, whatever you want, they're going to degen on that. And you're like, hey, what if I make a better platform for you to degen, and you can pay the miners and secure the network in a better way? And they were like, yeah, let's degen on this. And then everybody was like, no, Casey Casey made it so all the shitcoiners come to us. Like, fuck them. And it's like, but they're like paying the network, and that's like a good thing, right? And so like I'm of the opinion that this has gotten way too much attention, and it's like there's petty differences. So at the end of the day, like, look, fuck the state. Like, these motherfuckers are trying to destroy our money, our economic wealth, and anybody who sees that mission and wants to fight against it is my ally in the broadest sense. If we have a minority of differences on how and why we think that should happen, that's fine. Let's figure it out after we have beat the final boss and are figuring out what to do in the end.
Yeah, and I think also to add to the point of, bringing degens from other chains to Bitcoin and that being a good thing. I mean, maybe you're of the belief that if people are so sinful to touch other chains that they don't deserve to make it or whatever, and they should be cast to hell. But I think it's ultimately harm reduction for them to be doing it on Bitcoin. And they'll even say as much. I mean, when I talk to people that have come from Solana or the NFT world or Ethereum or wherever, Bitcoin actually isn't necessarily an easier or better experience for like true degenerate shitcoin gambling, right? Like, our block times are irregular and long. But why do they do it here? Because they want to collect Bitcoin over Solana or Ethereum. And I think that's good, that at the end of the day they're cashing out their degenning in Bitcoin. Like, that already is an improvement upon what they were doing.
I 100% agree.
I also want to add that to me the most powerful thing when I was first trying to figure that out is you tweeted an image that somebody had inscribed of Tank Man. And me, I was like, that 100% is why we need this technology. This is a dissident image that would get you thrown in a gulag in China for 10 years, and now anybody who has access to the Bitcoin blockchain can see that image, and that is an important political statement in the exact same way that now there are 3D printed gun plans on the blockchain that cannot be eliminated. That is extremely important for people around the world who want to free themselves from tyrannical regimes.
Very cypherpunk, if you
Absolutely.
will. Absolutely cypherpunk. I was going to say that, when people look at, oh no, a JPEG's on my blockchain, get your stuff off my blockchain, they forget that through the entirety of Bitcoin's history, user adoption hasn't occurred by buying fucking coffee. It hasn't occurred because they read 10 books by Mises and went down the rabbit hole. There's a handful of us who went and found Bitcoin that way. Most come for speculation. That's inherent. You look at 13, 17, and 2021, and you look at the wave of new wallets, volume, new users across all different companies and exchanges. It comes through speculation. And the more DeFi and degen stuff we have on Bitcoin, the more speculative loops that can pull people into Bitcoin. A lot of people didn't buy Bitcoin because they, like I said, read a huge manifesto on libertarian ideology and Austrian economics. They came into degen. They're humans after all. It's one of the most brilliant viral loops that Satoshi built into the protocol.
I think it's actually a fundamental part of Bitcoin. Like, I think one of the things that makes Bitcoin so robust is that it essentially harnesses human greed and it transforms it into a better incentive system. Like, what you're describing, where like it's built by speculation, people come to Bitcoin for speculation. Like, they come and they don't realize that it's a Trojan horse to destroy the like fiat financial system. And like, that's what BlackRock is doing. That's what JP Morgan is doing. Like, they are all drawn in by number go up, and they don't realize that they're digging their own grave, And I think that's a beautiful aspect of Bitcoin, and it's a big part of why Bitcoin will succeed ultimately.
I think if the price stayed stable at $10 a Bitcoin, none of us would be here right now. That volatility, that degen behavior is what made Bitcoin Bitcoin. What's made this entire ecosystem flourish. Speaking of really cool cypherpunk use cases of inscriptions, you brought up one earlier about 3D printed guns. That's really cool. That's very kind of OG Bitcoin ethos. Are there other very cypherpunk uses of inscriptions? Erin, if you want to take a first stab at that.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about Ephemera, my project?
like things like 3D printed guns, or you could upload some other treasured document that's valuable.
I mean, Bitcoin is the Library of Alexandria that can't be burned. Like, that's what it is. It's a database ultimately. And it's, I mean, more importantly, it's hard money, obviously. But, like, think about Bitcoin as if you're an archaeologist thousands of years in the future and it's a primary source document, because I believe that's what it will be, right? It's extremely robust. It's downloaded all over the world in its entirety. And, like, we have the opportunity to preserve our culture, to preserve our knowledge, to preserve everything, like, on Bitcoin now. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, I think obviously you see this wave of degenning that kind of comes from NFTs on other chains, and they're just sort of like repeating the 10K monkey JPEG thing. That's going to happen because that's what people know, and that's what they just copy that, right? But like what you're starting to see now is people starting to wrap their mind around that long-term perspective that Bitcoin encourages, right? And like I think that we're going to see much more like survival documents, philosophical texts inscribed on Bitcoin, the position of the sun and moon and all the planets in order to like tether us to astronomical time and our place, in the universe. All this kind of stuff, it's coming, it's happening already, but it takes time, like to actually create quality work. And I think a lot of like the complaints about inscriptions from Bitcoiners ultimately is just, it's a taste question, right? Like they don't like the art. That's fine. I wouldn't stand by like 99.9% of what's inscribed, maybe more than that. But it's a taste question, right? And if you saw something really cool, something that really spoke to you, like I think there's like an opportunity for change there, but that type of quality work, it takes time, it takes contemplation, and it takes enough people with enough creative vision wrapping their head around the medium.
On the taste question, Allah forgive me for mentioning them, but it's really funny that the toxic maxis, so many of them are into like Mises and like Rothbard and Austrian Economics. And like, what is the basis of Austrian Economics? What is at the very, very, very lowest level? It's the subjective theory of value, right? It's that people value what they value, and it doesn't necessarily have to be rational. And markets work best where people are just able to buy and sell what they value and bid on it. And then all of a sudden, like, falling prey to this taste question, being like, wah, I don't like the monkey JPEGs. And it's like, bro, your entire ideology is based on people valuing things that you don't value. The other thing that's really funny is that inscriptions are this very visible thing that people can have a unpleasant, like, taste reaction to. However, I guarantee you that the most unpleasant things that have been done on Bitcoin are like actual transactions for people to do like heinous things, I think that, terrorist financing of Bitcoin is like way overblown, but it is a fact that like, yeah, terrorists are for sure going to use Bitcoin. They're for sure going to fucking buy guns and bombs and shit with it. Like that's just a reality of making an uncensorable money. So having this like very, strong reaction to this like ugly monkey JPEGs just because they happen to show up on your Twitter feed is completely insane, right? You've got to acknowledge that Bitcoin is a tool, and just like every tool, people are going to use it for good things and bad things. And the most bad things are going to be things that you absolutely do not see, that do not show up on your Twitter timeline.
And I really want to reserve a space. Like, I think that there's going to be some extraordinary and incredible art that is going to be based on inscription.
One day. We're just waiting for it.
And I think people are experimenting with that, and that's really incredible and powerful, and I want to reserve and make sure that space will continue to be experimented in. And the best is that as people fuck with this and try to break Bitcoin and play with it in all different ways, we get to actually play out the game theory longer, deeper, and farther than was originally intended. And that's extremely important if we actually want to be thoughtful, because my number one thing is like, look, if your monkey images can actually break Bitcoin, I want to know that now before the state shows up to try to break money.
And I think what's funny too is these.
Sorry, just a moment. If we could just talk about broken things, the mic that you thought was broken actually isn't broken, so you guys don't have to share.
Hello. Okay,
There
let's
we
start.
go.
Yeah.
Wow.
There we go. All right.
Now we can all talk over each other.
Yay.
I think it's really interesting. These kind of, I would say, the Maxi Puritans are these. I would say a 2018 era cohort of Bitcoiners. Original Bitcoiners were not like this at all. Bitcoiners were like, of course they believed in the subjective value of anything because they were more libertarian and they understood that Bitcoin is a permissionless system. With the Bitcoin standard and the moralization of things like steak and food and art, this newer cohort of Bitcoiners are completely brainwashed and authoritarian, which is antithetical to the original values and principles of Bitcoin. Like they believe that modern art is a scam. Like, look, I think it's fucking stupid too, but like, it's not a scam. If someone wants to buy pink flamingos and put it in their front lawn, yeah, they've got terrible taste, but who gives a shit? And the idea that they should moralize every transaction as being fiat or not is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, they also sort of, just because there was a long period of time, sort of starting with Ethereum's launch, that there were all these things that, good or bad, people wanted to do, and you could not do them on Bitcoin. And so it led to the formation of this very insular Bitcoin culture where they couldn't say honestly, like, okay, yeah, it kind of, like, these things are stupid, but it's kind of unfortunate that you can't do them on Bitcoin, right? They had to develop a sort of sour grapes attitude where they're like, no, anything you can't do on Bitcoin is like definitionally evil. So it became just a very insular, like circle jerkular community.
I think also, like, you know, just speaking to the cultural aspect and like the niche that Bitcoiners have sort of found themselves in, I think like something that has broken within Bitcoin culture that I think maybe the anti-ordinal maxi people are not aware of is, you know, they see ordinals and inscriptions still within the context of their like cultural group, right? So, you know, like Taproot Wizards then becomes like their idea of this is what inscriptions are, this is what these ordinals people are like, they're all like this. And it's like, no, those are just like the people that are in your cultural group that like this. But the people that I talk to are like 21-year-old kids who are like sneakerheads that love like fucking around with AI, they love fucking around with weird technology on the internet, and now they're doing it on Bitcoin, and they're messing around with Bitcoin, and they're doing weird, non-standard transactions on Bitcoin, and trying to figure out like, you know, how can I maximize for this, or, you know, what weird things can I do? And you don't see that if you're in your cultural niche, your algorithmic bubble. You just see what's there for you. And I think like it's good that we have young people that are interested in Bitcoin, you know? Like Bitcoin was starting to get a boomer problem, you know, where all young people were going to other cryptocurrencies because they were cooler, not because they were better tech, not because they were harder money, but because there was more of a culture that suited them. And I think like Ordinals and Inscriptions has brought a lot of Zoomers to Bitcoin, which I think is a good thing.
Look, like, nobody owns, nor can they own Bitcoin. Bitcoin is for everybody, for all cultures, for all people, for all things. Nobody can stop that, and it belongs to everybody. So whatever cultural presentation gets presented to you, nobody owns that. So whether it is gay communists that want to be publishing their ideology on Bitcoin, or if it's far-right Nazis that want to publish their ideology on Bitcoin, it's open to everybody. Everybody's free to use it. And so, like, to me, this division has always been sort of a misnomer, and it feels like kind of a stupid wrestling match. Because at the end of the day, like, I think we're all on the same team, and we all get that, like, there's a bigger enemy past us. And I'm happy that people are playing with Bitcoin. And I'm happy that there's a culture that wants to call out and go, hey, I think that this shit is a fucking scam, and here's the reasons why, so that every individual gets their freedom of subjectivity to go, you know what? I think the monkey images are going to be worth a fortune in the future, and I'm going to go down on it. And same side, if you want to get the capital to figure out a way to short that...
You heard it here first.
What was that?
Go down on the monkeys. You heard it here first.
You know, and so, like, to me, this is all kind of a big debate that, like, I think is a misnomer. As Paul Esther pointed out, like, nothing can be done about it, so might as well just let it happen.
And I actually wanted to highlight on that earlier. I forget if you're an engineer or not, and I know Casey is, but information theory actually dictates why you can't stop it. Right, like you can't stop arbitrary data being put on the blockchain. Could one of you go into that in a little bit more detail, in a simplistic way?
It's really hard. I mean, actually, I think possibly you might be able to. You could like require that all. Maybe not. I don't know. It's just really hard. You know, you got some bits. We got a lot of hashes. We got a lot of encryption. We got a lot of all this fucking cryptography. What are the bits? What's in the bits? It's hard to say, right? If you can publish arbitrary data anywhere and just keep the decryption key off-chain but well-known among the people who are trading it, you can't stop it.
All right, so we've got to wrap up. But before we do, we were talking about how some of the art is really shit. And the
vast majority of the art.
Vast majority.
It's ass, man.
So the Taproot Wizards would like to give you an honorary Taproot Wizard designed just for you by Far in the front row. And if
I love Far, so I will gladly accept.
If the stage could put on his honorary wizard. Beautiful. What do you think?
Incredible. No, I like it. It's great.
Too bad Udi lost the keys to that one, huh?
Yeah, it's been burned, of course, but
I'll send you my wallet address, Udi. Thank you very much, Far.
It's like a Picasso, right?
Yeah.
But yes,
it's got the clock too. That's sick.
Oh, there's lots of little details in there. But they're shooing me off stage, so I gotta get off.
No. Just before we finish, Dan, one question from the audience. If you guys are happy with that.
We have time for one question.
One question, yeah. Maybe if we throw hands up, anyone in the audience, and I don't know, the panel can pick the lucky winner of the question. Anyone in the audience with a question on inscriptions?
They have no questions.
No questions. These guys just
they're stunned into silence.
Everyone's confused.
We got a hand up. We got a hand up over here. We got a gentleman over here.
just coming.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for the presentation you have been doing today. I noticed that nobody is really. Do you hear me well? Okay.
So. Definitely be loud.
Speak up a little.
Okay. So, congratulations for the launch of Runes this year. It was absolutely amazing. And you go around the show, nobody talks about runes and ordinals. It's like a mystery why you have been kind of forbidden to expose more what you're doing. We're talking about the Taproot Wizard and the environment around Taproot Digital Asset, but I think Taproot Digital Asset ended up to be what you created. So essentially you created something that is very powerful, but here at the show we don't hear about it a lot. And it's looked like that they want to call this more a Taproot digital asset than just naming it as runes or naming it as ordinals. Why do you think this is happening? Is that something that going on with the community that they're hesitating?
I think it's mostly an effect. It's a product of the fact that ordinals and runes and online degens are sort of non-mainstream online communities. And so when you get to a very big conference like this, which is sort of not speaking ill of normies, but it's sort of like a conference for normies, I think it's natural that you don't get a ton of that like hyper plugged in online stuff. And I think probably my names don't help, do you like runes? Like, what the fuck are runes, I should probably call it, Bitcoin digital assets or whatever, but just aesthetically, that would be terrible. And we'll see. I think there's not really much of a reason for a lot of people to know about or be interested in runes. Like, it's a lot of shit coins, it's a lot of fucking pump and dump, just like the rest of crypto. Really, my motivation in creating it was aesthetic. BRC20 came around, and it wasn't the most elegant, to my mind, protocol. And I woke up one day and Ordinals.com was all, JSON, and I was like, oh my god, this is terrible. So I really just wanted to create something, aesthetically pleasing. And where it goes, that's out of my hands now. It's up to the community to take it somewhere.
Well, I want to thank the panel so much for participating. It was a great conversation. We give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks everybody.
Dan.
Thank you, Dan, Casey, Erik.